What's up everybody, I'm Matt.
And I'm Beth.
And today we're going to be reviewing the interior in the 2022 Genesis GV70. So the GV70 is a stunning SUV. I mean, on the outside it looks amazing. I think it's the coolest looking of all these luxury SUVs in this segment. And the inside is also very, very impressive. I mean, it has this wow factor to it. Like, we just were in an Audi Q5 a few weeks ago. That's very nice in the traditional sense of luxury SUVs, but this is like, it completely kind of rewrites the book on like what you should expect out of a $50,000 or so luxury SUV. Now this one has tested as 64, but this is like the higher performing versions like you get with an AMG GLC 43 or a BMW X3 M40i, something like that. So this has a lot more performance, and these do start at only about $42,000, and you still get most of this same great stuff on this interior.
Right, and I think that it's really impressive, just the textiles and everything that you have here. It's all leather, it looks really nice, there's nothing that looks cheap, and so I think that that's really, really nice, especially in a luxury high performance car. That's what you want and that's what you pay for. So kudos to Genesis for that.
Yeah, I mean, the attention to detail is really impressive here. And I mean, it's one of those cars where every single panel is covered in a nice material. If it's not leather, then it's like softly padded like vinyl or something. Like even on the lower parts of the doors where you have these door bins, like in an Audi or something, that's still just gonna be like pretty hard plastic. And in this, it's like soft and nicely padded. I mean, everything in this, every switch is metal or like glossy black, nice plastic. I mean, everything just, it's a delight for the senses with all the different materials you have in here.
And especially the plastic, it very much is a color match to the rest of the leather, and with that plastic it has this kind of texture to it, so you're not going to get it scratched or anything like that having like a piano black. The only place that you have piano black plastic is in this front area here, and that won't get scratched. So it's just a little bit, but it's not like most of the car, which I feel like a lot of other competitors are doing, and it's too much for me.
Yeah, and it's also really nice that like this interior is navy blue with a red exterior, and Genesis is being really bold with the color options you can get for these interiors and the exteriors. I mean, there's way more colors. Like with every German manufacturer, it's like, well, you could have silver, black, or white, or maybe gray, or maybe a dark blue if you're lucky. That's it. This, there's reds, there's burgundies that look like purple, there's greens, there's matte greens, there's matte purples. I mean, all kinds of stuff. In the interior, it's just as colorful. There's this navy blue. You can get black or a normal beige if you'd like, but you can also get a purple interior in this thing with quilted seats and everything. You can get a dark green leather interior. Like, there's all these cool colors, and I think that especially for people, you know, that want a luxury product, you want that customization and that individuality, and not just have a ho-hum black interior like the thousands of other crossovers out there.
Yeah, honestly, I hate when there's two color choices. I love color, so being able to have all of these choices, I love that, because a lot of people like that. But then again, I know there are a lot of people that like the classic black or white, and that's okay, but it is really, really nice to finally have that customization, because so many competitors don't. So clearly, if we ever get this car, we will have a purple interior, not because I want it, but because he does.
Yeah, because it just is super cool. But anyway, getting back to the stuff here as far as the GV70, the seats are really good in this car. So one thing that's really great is you can actually get ventilated seats and even fairly low trim. So you don't have to go for a fully loaded model to get it or anything. I believe you can actually get one just like a mid-grade trim with ventilated seats. Now this one has this suede seats. That's only on this Sport Prestige Absolute Top trim that you get the suede. Otherwise, you're going to get nice quilted leather or normal leather, and then on the lower trims it's leatherette. But you know, so these seats are still really nice though. And again, navy blue with red stitching. I love it. Just cool stuff. So anyway, I mean, they have pretty good amount of bolstering to them. The bottom is a little flat for a sporty SUV. For a regular GV70, this would be totally okay. You do have adjustable side bolsters here, so I have them kind of cranked up so it's kind of hugging me a little bit more. You can customize that. There's also, of course, a bunch of lumbar support. There's a thigh extension support. out. And they're also massaging seats. Now, there's either an option to do lumbar or to do pelvic stretching, they call it, or you can do both, and it works okay. It's not my favorite massage out there, but for this segment, there's not a whole lot that offer a massage, so I think that's actually kind of a cool touch. I also love how customizable this interior is. Like, for example, these heated seats, you can go into the infotainment and you can set it up so that it'll do more on the bottom or more on the back, or only on the bottom or only on the back. So if you're someone who has back pain but you don't want to be roasting your butt, you can actually go into the infotainment and dial that in. No other car that I've seen ever has offered that as even an option. And it's literally just one thing they do in the infotainment system. It doesn't take a lot of money to do that, but just the customization the Genesis is offering, again, is just, I think, really what sets this apart from the competitors. You can dial in every single little thing, and the coolest thing is you can dial in all those settings and have it set up just for your profile. So if you share this vehicle with, you know, a significant other, you have a fingerprint reader here, and you put your finger on the fingerprint reader, and then it will automatically set all those settings to exactly what you want it to be. And obviously you have memory seats and stuff like that too, but it's just so cool you have that customization.
Yeah, and with the passenger, sadly you don't have the massage seating function, but you do have all of your normal power adjustments. So I think it's really great. You can still do your lumbar and stuff like that. So it's nice.
Yeah, and even like the headrests. They're some of the softest headrests I've experienced in a while. And I mean, it's just all these little details. And I think this is a vehicle you actually have to live with to really appreciate like how much they've truly obsessed over making this super nice in every single way. The steering wheel is also really good here in the GV70. Now this is the sportier one you get in the Sport Prestige. It's got a really great 9-3 grip, nice big 10 and 2 notches here. And I also love how you have all these buttons that are just backlit. And whenever you have the car off, all these buttons disappear. It's kind of cool. But you know, all of the usual assortment of buttons. You have nice metal scroller and little tune knobs there, and then you also have metal paddle shifters on the back of the wheel. Those are great. And it's also a heated steering wheel here. That's also something that isn't reserved for a top trim. You can actually get a heated steering wheel on a pretty low version of this vehicle, and so that's another really great thing. The gauges here are also really cool. Now this is one thing that they reserve for this Sport Prestige trim. So unless you go for this absolutely maxed out version, that's the only way you get these digital gauges. They're 12.3 inches, very cool. They have this really cool technology too, where they actually have a 3D effect. So you can go into the infotainment system and set it up if you'd like, and so we'll actually use this little sensors as infrared sensors above there to actually see your eyes, and we'll adjust it to give you a more 3D effect with this very high-tech screen technology. And it worked okay. It just made the gauges a little dimmer in my opinion. I like having them a little bit brighter. So I didn't actually use that feature a whole lot, but it's just cool that Genesis is trying 3D gauges because no one else is, and I just have to commend them for trying that. Even if it's not perfect in its execution, it's something that hopefully will get better over time. But a really cool touch there. There's also a bunch of different looks for those gauges, so you can customize, you know, for a sportier look or a more classy look there for the way the needles and stuff are all set up. And you know, just your basic information there in the middle. It isn't quite as cool as like the Audi gauges that allow you to have like a huge map view or anything like that. You don't have anything like that here, unfortunately. But I mean, I think they're just a really cool looking gauges. Now, if you don't go for this absolute maxed out trim, you still get a partially digital gauge cluster. It's the same cluster that you're going to get in like the G80 that I reviewed, and we did an interior review on that. I'll link that above if you want to see what those gauges look like a little bit more. But they're still nice gauges, but not as sweet as these ones are. You also get a 12-inch head-up display here in this top version of the GV70. That is another feature reserved for just this top trim. It's really nice to have. You know, it'll show you your normal speed stuff and also your safety information, adaptive cruise info, all that stuff, which is fine. But honestly, these gauges are so beautiful that I wouldn't mind not having the head-up display. You can turn it off, by the way, if you don't like it, but that is another thing, again, only for this top trim, and it's really nice to have. But coming over to the center of the dashboard here, one thing that is standard on all GV70s, even the little $42,000 one, is this 14.5-inch widescreen touchscreen display. It is really impressive. I even just love this home screen because it will actually tap into the local weather, and it will change to a different image depending on the weather. So like it was thunderstorming yesterday, and there's this really cool image they have of a thunderstorm there that pops up on there, and it's nicely blended into the navigation map there. But I mean, it's just a massive screen. It's hands down way larger than any other screen that any competitor offers by a good margin. I think everything else is like 10 inches at the biggest. So, I mean, this is almost, you know, like 50% bigger. And it's also, I love that it's touch, but it's also able to be controlled with this controller wheel, which is so nice. It has this like knurled glass kind of feeling to it here. And this is a lot better with its execution for this controller wheel versus what you got in the GV80. The GV80 had like an iPod scroll wheel kind of thing going on, which was flat, a little harder to like move and touch. This is, I think, the better way to go. I really hope they copy this controller for the GV80 for a little mid-cycle refresh or something, because I think this is a better idea, because this is mostly like what you get with all the other competitors with their controller wheels. And I think it actually worked really well with the way this menu system is set up. It's very simple to change radio stations, do all that kind of stuff. You still have a volume and a tune scroller down here, so you just spin those to change all that kind of stuff. Really, the only downside I can say for this system is that it doesn't have wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. You have wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but you know, like we were just in the Audi Q5 that had the wireless connectivity, and that's really nice because you just sit down in your car and it's already ready to go every time you hop in. And this not having that, you know, having to plug your phone in, it's truly a first world problem. But you know, we're talking about high-end luxury vehicles here, and so that's something that I would like to see them do to match, you know, all that newest luxury stuff.
And I will say that it is ever so slightly tilted towards the driver, but it's not terrible. I can still reach everything and maneuver through everything. And I can also use this click wheel too if I don't feel like reaching forward or anything. So it is really nice. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and actually I found myself using a click wheel a lot more than I was expecting to. Usually I'm just like, oh sweet, touchscreen, let me just touch everything. But with this, it is a little bit more of a reach, and so I actually, and it was just so easy to use the controller wheel that I use that most of the week.
Yeah, and I, coming from a Mercedes, have that controller wheel, and I'm totally used to it, so coming over to here, it's definitely not hard. I would feel right at home.
Yeah, I think like what I loved is like I can navigate everything with the controller wheel, but then whenever, like for example, I want to pause a song on Sirius XM, I can just hit the pause button instead of spinning a few clicks to actually get to the pause button. So I think there's pros and cons to having, you know, both things there, but I think that, you know, it's nice to have the option to do either one whenever you feel like it. And also it's hooked up to this Lexicon 18 speaker stereo, which is a really good stereo. Now I don't know if it's better than like the 3D Bang & Olufsen stereo in the Audi. It's close. This is a very good stereo, and if I hadn't just been in a bunch of other really high-end stereos recently, it would probably have knocked my socks off a little bit more. It's definitely very good for this segment. I think it's going to, you know, be pretty toe-to-toe with most of the others out there. But if you're really nitpicking and you're an audiophile, it might not be quite as good as some of the best in this segment. But it's still a very good stereo, very strong sounds, very good immersion. I think it's just the 3D effect isn't quite as intense in this as it is in others. So if you don't like that whole 3D thing, you might be fine with this stereo. But I loved it. I thought it was really great all week, and it was great to jam out some music in it.
And not being a crazy audiophile like he is, I think it sounded just fine.
Yeah, and I mean, you have the Burmester in your C-Class, and
yeah.
like you know, enjoy the higher end stereo stuff. And,
yes,
yeah.
I do.
And this didn't disappoint you, so that's pretty
exactly, good. Yeah, so it's not bad.
Yeah, and then, so then coming down to the climate controls here, I love how it's this little screen. This is something that like Audi's doing as well right now, but in the Genesis here, it works really well. It's the same kind of basic setup you got in the GV80, and I love how it has haptic feedback whenever you touch stuff as well, so it's just like the Audi where you touch the screen, but you actually get a vibration back on your finger there to kind of reinforce the fact that you actually touched it and actually registered that touch. And so that's really great. It makes it a little less distracting when you're driving to know that, yeah, like I'm actually touching stuff and it's working, instead of having to look down and be like, oh wait, it didn't register. So yeah, I think that works really great. It's a very nice little display too.
I will say, coming from sitting in the back seat with a baby, I did put my diaper bag right on the middle console right there, and it did hit all of their controls, and it changed the controls up here. So if you're ever having multiple people in your car, just make sure they're not like accidentally hitting that, and then it will change everything up in the front, because he was freaking out.
Yeah, I was like, why does it keep changing? But it is nice it has tri-zone climate. It's just kind of weird that it also changed the climate up front here. Typically that should be like totally separate back there. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, otherwise it's just a really great, you know, nice and easy to figure all that stuff out. And then just a little row of shortcut buttons there, which are also nice to have. Even the shifter knob here is just so nice with the knurled metal and the like glass kind of look to it, and it backlights so nice at night too. That whole thing kind of glows. It's really impressive, and yeah, they just do such a good job. I mean, you have this carbon fiber here on the side of the transmission tunnel area and everything. It's just, I'm just so impressed with all the materials in here. It just blows me away. So anyway, but moving on to the storage spaces here in the GV70, it's pretty good for this segment of vehicle, you know, pretty on par with the rest. You have a nice large pocket in the door with a bottle holder. In the middle here, you do have this wireless charging pad, which really goes way deep down there. You also find 2 USB jacks in there, and nice that it's kind of hidden away, although the only downside with it being so far deep in there is that it's really hard to see your phone, but if you have your phone plugged in, then you'll be able to see everything on the screen there, so not a big deal. And then you have your 2 cup holders here, and you have the center armrest as well, which is got some nice padding to it. It's not super plush, but I think it's, you know, pretty nice. And you open that up, and you'll see a good size bin in here with this little removable tray up top, and this actually goes further back than you'd realize. Like, I can actually fit almost my entire fist underneath this whole thing, so there's a little bit of like extra storage. It looks, you know, a little smaller than it actually is, and you also see a power outlet in there as well.
Yeah, it can be like your secret storage for anything you might want to put away from everybody else.
Yeah, you can hide your favorite gum in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's it as far as the storage. I mean, it's not amazing, you know. I think that like the Q5 had a couple more little bins, and some of the others, like for example the GLC, I think has a bigger like open space here in the front. So maybe not the best space utilization, but I think for most people it's going to be okay. Again, because you can just throw everything in the middle here, but maybe not the best in that area. But that's like the only nitpick I can say about this interior, is it doesn't have a ton of interior space. But anyway, moving on to the back seat here in the GV70, it's a pretty good sized back seat. Now I would say it's probably on par with the rest in the segment. It's certainly not any more legroom than the others. It's still not as spacious as I would like it to be, but I guess the argument is if you want more space, go up to a GV80. And so anyway, I'm 5'9", sitting behind myself. I still have a couple of inches of legroom to spare there, so I mean, it's not like it's cramped by any means. Plenty of headroom as well, even with this panoramic moonroof, which by the way isn't another high-end feature. This panoramic roof comes on everything except the absolute base model. So, you know, and it opens up as well, which is nice, because, you know, not all of them open up these days. So nice that it does open up like a normal moonroof, and you have that glass roof. And it's also like the little touches back there that are nice. Like you have the little sunshades that slide up for those, you know, second row seats there, which is nice, because that's something you don't always get again in some of the competitors. So nice to have that. There's also a full down center armrest, the 2 cup holders built into it, and then like she mentioned, you know, you have your climate controls there in the middle, as well as dedicated air vents, plus 2 more USB jacks and another power outlet in there as well. There's also bottle holders in those doors as well. And so yeah, I think it's actually a really nice back seat. Those seats do recline as well, and they also fold down, of course, if you want more space. Then moving on to the cargo space here in the GV70, that's another area where I'd say this is actually maybe a little bit smaller than a comparable Q5 or GLC. Not drastically so, but I think really the thing that jumped out at me was that the floor is a lot shallower. So it's a little deeper in a Q5 or a GLC, where you just have more ability to stack things, versus this is a little less usable with that. And you can open up beneath the floor there. You'll see there's a couple little pockets, and then also a spare tire, which does take up a lot of the extra space there. So not a huge bin under the floor either. You have little pockets on the sides there, but you know, that's about it. It's not probably the best from a utility standpoint with the GV70 here, but I still think for most families you'll still be able to, you know, fit a decent amount of stuff in here. But I wouldn't say it's best in class with cargo by any means. But again, it just comes down to what your priorities are. But I think that you know, overall with everything else of the GV70 here, I mean, it's so much beyond what the competitors are offering in so many ways, that if the space thing is something that you can live with 100%, this is a fantastic value. Because I mean, when you compare the pricing of these, I'll talk more about pricing in my driving review, but the pricing of this is several $1,000s cheaper than even the next cheapest competitor. And when you look at some of them, this can be over $10,000 cheaper than some of the other stuff when comparably equipped. Because again, Genesis just gives you everything here at 64 grand, versus like 64 grand doesn't get you very far with the Mercedes GLC 43. You have to go up to almost 80 grand in a GLC 43 in order to get all the stuff you get here in this. So that's really where Genesis, you know, it goes back to the value proposition and the fact you get a 10-year warranty warranty on the Genesis versus the, you know, like 3-year warranties you get on all the other stuff from Germany. And so if you're actually buying one of these vehicles and you're not just leasing it and flipping it every 3 years, if you're actually buying something, this is going to give you a longer warranty, and that's another nice perk. But anyway, check out the driving review if you want to hear how this vehicle drives. But that's all of our thoughts on the interior. Let us know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Genesis for providing us here with this GV70 to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.